Christmas, Anastasia.
Happy Christmas. You know what I learned? Because in the States, we say Merry Christmas, but in the UK, it's all Happy Christmas. And for some reason, I feel like it should be the reverse.
Yes, I know what you mean.
We should say Happy Christmas here.
I think...
and you should say Merry Christmas.
Yeah, no, I think that's where I've gone with in my brain, because it is 50-50 in the UK, whether it's Merry Christmas or Happy Christmas. And often it depends on who you're talking to. Yeah, for me...
It just seems Merry Christmas would be more English.
It is more English.
Happy Christmas is totally American.
Well, you know, that was my assumption too, hence my Happy Christmas introduction. For you are American, I believe.
Well, there we go. Yes. Well, welcome back. Did you know it's the 2024 season?
But Anastasia, it's 2023.
Well, that's also what Alejandro Davidic Fokina said during his post-match interview. So the 2024 season has technically started at the end of 2023, and the first, I guess, kind of official match, I don't know if it's the exactly first official match, but ADF from Spain is playing in the United Cup, and he defeated, I don't know how to say his name properly. His last name is Wild. Do you pronounce it Wild?
Thiago Sebroth Wild.
Wild from Brazil. And during his on-court interview, the reporter was sort of like, "Oh, are you excited for the new season?" And he's like, "It's not the new season. It's the end of 2023." ADF, he's just like us.
But it is the new season because we've had some time off. We've had the tour finals, we've had everything else, and now the tours are sort of back underway, and we'll be explaining more in a bit about what's happening, how the season's going to kick off in 2024, because there's not a lot of events to talk about in terms of results, so it's about looking to the future.
Exactly. It's when everything is so bright and beautiful and bushy-tailed and the future is ahead of you and you're so excited for your favorites to win all of the slams. And we do have some news in that respect, on the WTA side, but we're jumping ahead. Today, what we're going to talk about, because we figured it's the best way to start a season, is talking about how you watch tennis. Like, how are you going to watch tennis in 2024? And tennis being tennis, there are approximately 174 different ways in which you can watch tennis.
Slight exaggeration, but yes, I think what's kind of critical is you have to remember, with pretty much any other sport, there's usually a united governing body with its own marketing team or division that will negotiate rights and some such. The only similarity I could think of, like maybe a bit more split, is if you were watching European soccer and like deciding whether you're watching a National League and the Champions League. Tennis, even though there is a tour, there are so many different bodies involved in organising it that the actual coverage gets spread across multiple TV stations. And so those bodies are the ATP, who organise the men's tour, the WTA, who organise the women's tour. Each individual Grand Slam negotiates its own separate TV deal.
Its own deals,
That's kind of what you need to know. So we've done a little bit of research for this show and sort of, where you can watch tennis. And if there's anyone listening from Latin America or South Africa, you are very, very lucky people, because you're the only regions that I am aware of that have tennis all on one channel, which is otherwise
lucky you
you're
guys.
Going to have to jump around a bit and get multiple subscriptions, which is what I'm currently in the process of doing over in the UK.
Yeah, same. I have multiple subscriptions depending on which tour I'm watching, what Grand Slam I'm watching. And, I think this is a bugbear for a lot of tennis fans who want to follow the tour. So, maybe growing up, at least for me, when I was little, all I watched were the Grand Slams. So it wasn't as, I think, apparent how chaotic it could be to watch tennis. And there was a time, and we'll talk about this, where in the States, there was kind of, you could just turn on the TV and there would be tennis on. But as I've grown older, as I've become more of a fan who wants to follow the tour for all 365 days of the year, you realize there is no one channel that can provide that for you, at least where I live. You have to sort of cobble together this weird streaming, amalgamation to be able to watch every single match that you want to watch when you want to watch it. Because we also have to consider that tennis is a global sport that is played all over the world, all in all different time zones. So it's kind of like, where can you stream it at the time that you want to watch it? It can be a very difficult sport to follow. But where should we start, Nick? Should we just go through because I'm in the US, you're in the UK, we can sort of talk about what it's like watching tennis in those regions. So what is it for you in the UK? If I was living in the UK, how could I watch tennis?
Okay, well, again, as you said, like it's about being scattered across in different places. When I was growing up, I would only watch the slams. When I first got into tennis at sort of 13, 14, 15, there were about 2 or 3 channels I needed to keep an eye on. And then as I sort of gotten older and wanted to follow tennis all year round, it's become a bit more complicated. So I would say the big things that I think would probably we're going to simplify it, and we're going to focus on the full slams and the tours in general. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do, rather than try and dive in and work out where, like, Billie Jean King Cup is going to be broadcast, or where it's like that. That
Davis Cup.
Davis Cup, yeah. Like those add in some other things into the mix. So in the UK, the easiest slam to watch is Wimbledon, unsurprisingly, and that is shown on the BBC. Where basically they pretty much shut down everything else and just show tennis. So imagine it. So BBC is our public service television. It's our main television channel, as it were. It's a bit like, imagine if PBS showed the US Open in the US.
That'd be so great.
Yeah, exactly. It's a public service to show Grand Slam tennis. And actually, little tidbit of fact, actually, it is UK law that the Wimbledon final has to be on free to air. It has to be on the BBC or a channel that can be accessed without a subscription, along with certain other sporting events. So you are in the UK, you're pretty much guaranteed to be able to watch at least the Wimbledon finals. So yeah, you've got those, and the BBC coverage is fantastic because you could basically watch any court, whatever you want, on their website. In the UK, for the Australian Open and the French Open, that you get those by subscribing to Discovery Plus, which owns Eurosport, and then for the US Open and for the ATP and WTA tours, mostly you would need to get a package that would have Sky Sports, which is a mainly European sort of body, sort of owned by, I think it's part of the Rupert Murdoch empire.
Okay.
So if you're Fox in the States, kind of, it's a sort of a sister international group. Yeah, essentially that's where I would get it. Now, so for me, I have bought a subscription to a service that will give me access to Sky Sports Tennis, because they have now built a television channel that will only show tennis all day, every day.
So kind of like a tennis channel vibe, where it's just tennis all the time.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
But obviously, Tennis Channel's got multiple channels, as it were. But
right, yeah.
Sky Sports Tennis is going to be where it's at for following the tour. Obviously, I'm going to be at the mercy of whatever match they watch. It's not like when I had Amazon Prime and I could pick whichever one I wanted from their streaming options. I mean, I could if I paid a little bit more for Sky, but again, for our UK listeners will know, Sky is flipping expensive. Trying to make sure we don't put an explicit tag on this episode. And so as a kind of a vibe, the cheapest deal I could get to watch Sky for on a 6-month deal was £21 a month.
Okay.
Which is a lot more expensive than when I had Amazon Prime and it was under a tenner. That gives you a bit of an idea. BBC is free as long as you pay your TV license, and then Discovery Plus you're paying sort of £7-8 for a month. You can cancel after a month. So that's what I generally do for the Australian and the French is I'll just buy a subscription for a month. I'll subscribe for a month and then cancel it. That's the vibe in the UK. That's where I would be able to watch it. I will probably be glued to Sky Sports Tennis now. I have that package for most of the year.
So I guess for you, there are 3 things. So you need the BBC. So if you want to watch as much tennis as possible, you have to have the BBC.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's free.
Yeah, you get
Sky
it
Sports. Yeah,
Sports,
Sky Sports. And what was the other one?
Discovery Plus.
Or could you, and Discovery Plus for the Grand Slam. Yeah. So you need 3 services.
If I bought, now there are some higher end Sky packages that I could buy and then have Discovery Plus folded in with it.
Okay.
But that would probably cost double what I'm paying. So there's it's not great, and that's to watch 90% of the tour. If I wanted to watch sort of have the option to access every single event, I'd probably have to subscribe to something like Tennis TV as well, which is an international channel that shows all of the ATP. The WTA has WTA TV as an equivalent, but at some point you have to decide how much is too much. And realistically, I'm thinking, am I going to want to watch every single ATP 250? No. What am I going to want to watch? I'm going to want to watch the slams. I'm going to want to watch the Masters 1000 events. I'm going to want to watch probably most 500s. And then anything below that will be on a week-on-week basis. But like even if I couldn't have access to, say, the Warsaw Open, so I could watch Iga destroy the field and win a 250, that's fine. You know, that's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. I'm having the situation at the minute where I don't have Tennis TV. I don't have Tennis Channel, because you can get Tennis Channel in the UK if you wanted it. Which means I can't watch the United Cup, which is going on right now. And that's due to me going, well, actually, it's not worth it for the rest of the year. So why would I have it just for United Cup?
For this,
it's not a slam. But I'll still have access to be able to watch Brisbane, which is probably what Sky's going to show. Maybe bits of Auckland because Emma Raducanu is playing. But so does that give you, as a non-UK listener, or even someone who's in the UK who maybe is getting into tennis, a good idea of what the landscape is?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And it also, then you sort of can decide what's more important to you. Like, what part of the tennis tour do you want to follow? And where can you sort of put most of your resources to get? And it's very similar, I would say, in the US, if maybe a little bit more expensive, as things can be in the US as they are. Okay. Because, I mean, first of all, there's no free way to watch tennis.
No,
there's no
free way to watch
BBC.
Sports, even with the BBC, like the UK has this weird thing called a TV license.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which you have to pay for. That's how the BBC is funded. If you want to watch live TV. And that's £150 a year.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah.
So
even though the BBC is what you get as standard if you are willing to pay that license fee. Right.
So in the US, how do you watch tennis? I think back in the 90s, I think in the height of sort of Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras, the Williams sisters were coming up, when I think tennis was more popular in the US, there were a lot more ways to watch tennis. I think, we have some channels, we have ESPN, we have NBC, ABC, CBS. Those are like the 3 big the three big channels in the States. And there was a time you could just turn on the TV to CBS Sports or NBC Sports, and there was tennis happening. And that's how I started watching tennis, because it was just on TV. I think, unfortunately, I think if I was growing up now, if there wasn't sort of a star that I was following, or I wanted to, if I was a new fan in the US and there was no Coco Gauff, for example, I don't think I would pick up tennis, because the barrier to entry of how you just discover tennis is so hard. You can't just discover tennis anymore. You can't just turn on the TV and there's tennis on. And you can be like, what is this? So we have lost that ability a little bit. But if you do want to watch tennis, here are the multitudes of ways you can watch tennis. So, Grand Slams, the US Open and the Australian Open and Wimbledon, you can watch on ESPN. To get ESPN, you need a cable subscription, which still exists in the States. I think a lot of people, they go through the whole cutting of the cord thing, so all they have is streaming, but there are cable subscriptions that you can get, or you can subscribe only to ESPN and just get their streaming service. That streaming service for ESPN can run you, $129 a year. And that's just for the Grand Slams. That's just for the Grand Slams. Or if it's part of your cable package, then you can get ESPN that way. But again, a cable package can run you anywhere from $200 a month. For a cable package, depending on what you get. Now, the difference, I think, between watching or having ESPN, and you talked about this a little bit, having ESPN on cable versus just having the streaming service, is with the streaming service, I can watch any match I want on any court. If you have it through cable, you have to watch whatever it is they are airing at the time. So you have no choice as to what you want to watch. So that's ESPN, and that's for the Grand Slams. The French Open is aired on Tennis Channel. Tennis Channel has the rights in the States for the French Open, but they don't have it for the whole time. So for the first week, you can watch it on Tennis Channel. For the second week, they share the rights with NBC. So you can also then watch the second week on NBC as well, but you can also watch the Tennis Channel. So they have split ownership of that package. So that's the Grand Slams. I think also,
I have a question on that.
Yes.
Is there not a similar arrangement? And again, this is someone who's completely out of the loop asking this. Mm-hmm. Is there not a similar arrangement with the US Open and Wimbledon? Isn't there some of the main channels do show some matches still? I know you probably couldn't watch every match, but could you watch the US Open final not on ESPN? Is it on CBS or something like that? NBC?
I'm not sure about the US Open, but Wimbledon, yes. Wimbledon, yes. Again, so they have these half packages where, again, if you want to watch the first week of any slam, you either have to have ESPN or Tennis Channel. And then when it comes to the second week and they're into the finals and the semifinals and all that, then you can watch for, I think, Wimbledon is ABC, French Open is NBC or Peacock, another streaming service. And I don't know about the US Open. I feel like the US Open is an ESPN exclusive, but I would have to double check that. Again, there are multiple ways to watch all these things. So unfortunately, it's pick your poison. But I would, in terms of, I'm going to talk about if you want to watch the whole thing in one place, because again, if you don't have ESPN and you just have NBC, you're just stuck with what they decide to show in the second week. And here's the thing too, if an American doesn't make it to the second week, good luck. They're not, they probably won't show the matches. Or even worse, which I've experienced this before, is because of advertising deals and if there's a football game happening or a baseball game, they might just cut to the baseball game or cut to the football game in the middle of your tennis match, because tennis matches, as we know, can run pretty long. And I think also that's kind of a part I would like to talk about why it is so difficult to, especially in the States, have tennis on just regular television. If a match is going to go 5 hours, how is a cable company supposed to decide, well, are we just going to air it for 5 hours, but there's other stuff going on that they need to cover? They have, advertising commitments to different brands and all this stuff. So I don't like watching tennis on an ABC, CBS, or NBC because their priorities are not the tennis. Their priority is to their advertisers and to what other brand deals they have. So if your match is going too long, they'll just cut to something else and then you're stuck.
Which I could see happening. I mean, it does. It's not that bad in the UK when it's Wimbledon. Like the only main channel is the BBC with Wimbledon, and you've got the BBC have 4 channels and 2 of them get dedicated to tennis pretty much the entire day, all day.
Yeah.
And if any matches overrun late into the evening, they've deliberately scheduled reruns afterwards. They could just chuck those or move them over. Sometimes maybe they'll move everything over onto one, BBC Two or something. If there's a Reggie schedule thing that they want to go out, their evening talk show or whatever. And then sometimes, they'll move on what the big thing is and bump it to the streaming service or the website. So I have experienced that. We're no, I was following that match, but not quite as bad as, nope, that's it, your time's up.
That's it. Something else is playing and you're like, oh my goodness, okay. So, and that goes for all sort of terrestrial, I think, cable channels in the States where, I say, if you want to watch tennis and watch the whole match from beginning to end, just stick to a streaming service. Because if you're relying on terrestrial TV, you're subject to it just being cut off to something else. So that's mostly the Grand Slam. So those are the various ways of which you can watch the Grand Slams in the States. Now, for the rest of the tour, you have to have either a tennis channel or a tennis TV to watch the rest of the tour. I have both because I like commentary on tennis TV. I think I love the app better. It's a little easier to navigate for me. And I can just pick, I want to watch this 250 or this 500 or whatever is happening. And then I can just go to that and see all the matches that are happening at that time and pick which one I want to watch. I think tennis TV is set up in a very nice way. The unfortunate thing, the first service I ever got was tennis TV. And I think we've talked about this before. I wasn't really watching WTA matches as much. So I was fine. I didn't really miss it. But the more I started following the WTA tour, I was like, wait, I want to follow their matches and I want to watch that. Well, how do you watch that? You need another service. So we don't have WTA TV in the States. So I had to go to the Tennis Channel. And Tennis Channel, there are 2 different ways you can watch. Actually 3 different ways, but ways you can have Tennis Channel in the States. You can have it through a cable subscription. And when you have Tennis Channel through a cable subscription, you are subject to what they have on. I think that's why you'll see a lot on social media sometimes where people get up in arms because they were watching a tennis match and then they cut to pickleball, or they didn't have the exact match that they wanted playing at the time. So with Tennis Channel on cable, you are subject to their programming. You're subject to whatever they have on at that time. And they have 2 channels. They have Tennis Channel and then Tennis TC2, basically. And TC2 is where they kind of will show maybe other courts on during the tournaments, or maybe a match that's not as popular. But there again, you're also just subject to what they put on there. You have no choice in the situation. TC2 also just started being free. Not free. Nothing's free in this world. But if you have Amazon Prime in the States, you can now watch TC2 on Amazon Prime as just part of their package. So that's a way you can watch tennis. But again, you have no control over what's on there. The other way you can have Tennis Channel is getting Tennis Channel Plus, which is their subscription service, which is how I have it, where they just have all the matches, all the courts, all the tournaments, and you can just pick and choose which one you want to watch there. The lovely thing about TC Plus is because Tennis Channel covers the French Open, that's actually where I watch most of the French Open matches, because trying to figure out what they're going to show on cable, it's, you have no choice in what court they pick. So TC Plus is where I think you should go if you're in the States and want to watch WTA matches and ATP matches. So that's the thing. So you might be asking, Anastasia, you have Tennis Channel Plus. Why do you still have Tennis TV? And it's, for me, it's two things. It's the commentary. I prefer the commentators on Tennis TV to Tennis Channel. And Tennis Channel has an incredible delay. Like sometimes a whole game. they're behind.
Right.
So that can be so irritating as someone like me who follows social media a lot, and literally I'm in the middle of a match and I get an alert that someone else won, and I'm like, but I just you know what I mean? Yeah. So Tennis Channel is not my favorite. If the WTA was on Tennis TV, I would ditch Tennis Channel immediately. But unfortunately, if I want to watch WTA matches, I still have to have Tennis Channel. So those are the different ways that you can watch, tennis in the States. And as you can see, it's a lot. You have to pick and choose. I think the easiest way to go is if you want to watch the most tennis possible, if you're a new tennis fan and you just want to watch the most tennis possible and you get Roland Garros as well, Tennis Channel is the way to go if you're in the States. Just get a subscription to Tennis Channel Plus. You will be covered. Unfortunately, once it gets to the US Open, which is our local Grand Slam, you then need to make sure you have ESPN in order to get
I was going to ask that because so you're saying that Tennis Channel has the Australian Open and Wimbledon coverage as well?
No, they don't at all.
They don't.
Just
okay.
Roland Garros. Yeah. Just Roland Garros.
So only Slam they've got. So ironically, Tennis Channel is very much for the tennis fan. It's for the tennis fans who want to follow everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything else, I should say. It depends on how much you care about anything outside of the Grand Slams, really.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you want to follow only one Grand Slam, the US Open, I would say definitely get Tennis Channel, because it'll throw in the French Open for free there. It'll throw in the French Open and you can, watch a bit of clay and stuff. But yeah. I think an added wrench into this also is the Olympics this year.
Yes.
So the Olympics is this year. I'm going to be really fascinated to see how it's handled. Where I can watch because technically NBC has rights to the Olympics, and you can usually just watch whatever, but I'm just how they're going to cover the tennis and where they're going to put it if I want to watch every single match.
The tennis coverage is usually wrapped up in the broadcast deal of the Olympics. So I know in the UK it'll be on the BBC, and the BBC will basically offer whatever coverage you want. Again, the Olympics is one of those, has to be on the TV somewhere. So the BBC website will be on point of call. They will pretty much have every sport of the Olympics going on that you can watch whenever you want. So I would imagine if the Olympics got a similar deal with NBC, that's where you'll find your Olympic tennis.
Yeah, it's probably going to be because Peacock is a streaming service of NBC. I have a feeling that that's going to be what happens, is that a lot of stuff will just be streaming all day long on Peacock. So something to consider this year in particular, being an Olympic year.
Something I wanted to pick up on something you said earlier was, nothing is free. I don't think any of us expect anything to be free. And this is a little bit of a bee in my body, because sometimes when I post on social media about the decisions I've made for like when I'm watching, for like what I've subscribed to and things like that, or like one of the big things in the UK was when tennis moved from Amazon Prime to Sky Sports and the price to follow the sport tripled or quadrupled. That's more the issue I have rather than having to pay for it. Like, I think, and this is things for like, I think people listening in are going, oh my gosh, I can't deal with all that. Like, that's something else on top of it. Like, it's a sport at the end of the day. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But it's down to what you prioritize. We'll keep you up to date with everything you want to. And there are other ways of following the sport other than watching it, watching it live. Like, for years, I just followed the ATP website. When I was a lot younger, I didn't have a subscription that would cover the US Open. That was the one slam of the year I had to miss. But it's something that's dawned on me as being important. Was can you afford to watch everything? Are you available to watch everything? No, because you're working. Like, both Anastasia and I have jobs not in tennis, and our employers, although very sympathetic, would not be super understanding if we suddenly stopped working.
We spent all day watching tennis.
We've come close a couple of times, but but also, someone I know on tennis Twitter is vision impaired, and so actually being able to watch the sport's a physical impossibility for them. So there are ways around that. There are radio services. I don't know what public radio is like in the US. Again, there's 3 letters in the UK, BBC. They usually have radio coverage of every single slam. Wimbledon's pretty extensive, but they have a channel called 5 Live, which is just dedicated to live news and sport all day. So that's where they'll do the sports coverage. And so that's where I've followed a lot of tennis over the years. Is I can't watch, I'll stick the radio on and stick it in my ears. Each Grand Slam also has its own radio station. So Australian Open Radio, Radio Roland Garros, Wimbledon Radio, US Open Radio. And actually the content on there is pretty good. But I can mainly speak for Roland Garros. I really enjoy listening to Radio Roland Garros when that's on. There isn't really one for the tour anymore. There used to be an ATP radio, but that has been gone for about 5 years now. Or there's our trusty friend YouTube. And no, I'm not talking about when someone sticks a match on YouTube for the stream to be taken down within 5 minutes.
Yeah, but not that. We don't support that.
No, we really don't, for multiple reasons.
Yes.
It's not the best way of watching the sport, primarily. And there's something is free, it's probably not good quality. Yes.
And also just a little sort of soapbox moment on that, because I am my job is in the media, and people, I think you mentioned it a little bit, just picking up on the fact that I said nothing's free and stuff. It's really important to understand why I personally, and Nick as well, it seems, we don't support sort of illegal streams of matches and stuff, because this is a product that someone produced in order to sort of create revenue for the tours. So it's not, they're just not putting tennis on for the fun of it. It's a business. It's people's jobs. It's people's livelihoods. It's the tennis players' livelihoods and their jobs. And so I think it's really important to understand that we're not just saying nothing's free just because it's people's livelihoods. And it's important to respect that and respect the work that they're doing. And if you can afford it, pay for it. Otherwise, there are other ways in which you can consume tennis for either a low cost or free, which I think Nick is going to go into, because we do have our friend YouTube and some really great channels where you can almost like radio stream tennis and listen to commentary on matches.
Absolutely. So one of those YouTube channels is how Anastasia and I met. We've mentioned them a couple of times, Talking Tennis. What they tend to do is, they'll have a live stream. They'll put a live stream on, and there'll be occasionally one, but it's usually 2 people having a chat whilst watching the match. And was set up by a guy called John Silk, who you've heard on the show before. And that's generally they tend to try and have a universal coverage where they'll try and have a commentary of the big matches. And so I'm one of those YouTube commentators. So is Anastasia. Probably I do it more frequently, but like I'm
Yeah.
very conscious of when I'm doing it that I'm gonna assume at least half the audience isn't watching any of the pictures because they can't. That's what I've done in the past. Like when I was on YouTube, there's Tennis Talk with Cam Williams. He was the first really big tennis streamer, and he's still going. He's on YouTube and Twitch. Very enthusiastic Australian commentator. He's going to be absolutely loving life now. Tennis is in Australia.
Yeah.
Really,
His sleep
really.
schedule is going to be so good.
His neighbours hate him apparently. So
Oh, really?
when it's not in Australia. But there's a couple of others as well, like Game to Love is a series of streams, tennis streaming commentary that Talking Tennis kind of came from. So John, who set it up, was originally part of them. Still a great group of guys. And there's also Quality Shot Tennis who've just started out. We've partnered up with them a couple of times. But yeah, there's definitely YouTube streamers out there who do know what they're talking about. The great thing about it is they're very easily interactable with as well. So they will do their very best to bring the match to life for you if you can't physically watch it for one reason or another. So yeah, and Anastasia was saying earlier before we started recording that you started. No, yeah, you used to put YouTube streams on when you were working.
Yeah. It's, again, like Nick said, we both have jobs. We can't watch tennis 24/7. But I wanted a way to still follow matches while I'm at work, just listening, like passively, listening to the match. And that's how I discovered Cam Williams. Cause I was like, how do I, is there a radio station or what? And I just discovered him on YouTube, and he was so dynamic, and his commentary is very exciting, and he almost brings you into the match, which is a really great quality to have. I have to say, there are some times where I'm at home and I could be watching the match, but I just put him on because I'm cleaning the house or I'm doing something and I can't just sit in front of the television, and I still feel like I watched the match. You know what I mean? So I think there are definitely ways in which you can consume tennis at a low cost, resorting to illegal streams that will be shut down in 5 minutes. And that's not really the best way to watch tennis. And I think it's really important to, if you are a fan and you are supporting the tours and you're supporting your favorite players, watching it in the right way is important as well, because you want to keep the sport going, and that's how they keep the sport going, is through media deals, for the most part.
Exactly. I think the main conclusion from this, because obviously we've been talking about this for a while, is because tennis is so spread out, and unless you have the money, if you have the money to pay for everything, great. If you don't, pick the stuff that's going to give you the coverage, either the most coverage possible or the coverage that you're most interested in. If you just want to watch the slams, that's simple. Well, it's not that simple in the US, but if you just want to watch the slams in the US, get ESPN, do a one-off subscription to Tennis Channel once a year. If you're in the UK, you've got the BBC. Stick a couple of subscriptions to Discovery Plus every couple of months, and then buy a day pass on Now TV or something to get Sky access to watch the US Open final or something. That's kind of where I think we're gonna land with that. And if you can't necessarily watch it, then there's radio stations or there's YouTube out there. I think that's a nice little summary for you. But hopefully you still want to watch tennis, and if so, go and check those different websites out for it.
Yeah. Speaking of tennis, what's been happening?
Well,
because we did have the off season, but
we did. Well, the off season ended today. So we are recording this on the 29th of December, and today is is day one of the United Cup, which is the first tennis event of the 2024 season. We've had a few exhibitions in the last few weeks in the Middle East and whatnot. So Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic had a match. Ons Jabeur and Arina Sabalenka also had a match. But the focus now is the tennis that is started to happen. So I believe the tennis season is, if I'm looking at the time now, is about 14 hours old.
Yeah.
Already. And we've had about 6 tennis matches already. But Anastasia, do you want to explain what the United Cup is?
So the United Cup is a group event. So it is an ATP NWTA event, a la the Davis Cup or Billie Jean King Cup. Players are playing for their or representing their country in group stages. So it's structured very much like Davis Cup, Billie Jean King Cup, in kind of sort of like a World Cup like format where there are different groups. I think are they?
There's six. Do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
So, okay.
There's six different groups.
There's 6 groups with 3 countries in each group. Each country will play each other once, and then the winners of each group will advance to the quarterfinals, with the highest performing second place groups in the groups going through to the quarterfinals as well, and then it goes into a knockout phase. So it's very much, you're right, Anastasia, a very condensed version of Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup, because they tend to be.
It's basically if the Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup had a baby, it would be the United Cup.
Yes, it would. I think there's a couple of things that's kind of critical here. Is like, really, it's another one, and I think that's kind of in some of the discourse around this. It's another one. Here's the key differences. One, it's men and women playing on the team together, unlike Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup, where they are separated. So you have a men's singles match, a women's singles match, and then a mixed doubles match to decide as the last match. The other key thing to note about the United Cup is this event counts towards world rankings, whereas Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup don't.
Yeah,
that's something else to bear in mind. Is suddenly that ends up attracting a lot of players, not just because there's points on offer, but also because it's actually a pretty good warm-up because it's in Australia. Pretty good event to set up your season, which pretty much as soon as the tennis season starts, we're in Grand Slam prep because we're heading for the Australian Open at the end of January.
Yeah. And, speaking of attracting a lot of players this year, the field is very stacked. You have Djokovic is playing, Iga is playing, Taylor Fritz and Jessica Pegula, who are the reigning champions from last year, they're playing again. You have Tsitsipas, you have FAA. It's a very, who's who of tennis. So it's a really great tournament to follow if you want to kind of your favorites and also kind of get a sense of where people are at the beginning of the season. We've already had a few matches that already I've been very impressed by. We had Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. He has such a big name, but I'm just going to shorten that to ADF. He played his first match against Wild, who's a Brazilian player, and he played phenomenal. It was one of those 2-set matches where I think the score was 6-4, 6-love. And it was one of those matches where I think for me, having watched ADF all through last season, it was one of those matches that he could have lost. I've seen him lose those sort of matches before. If anyone remembers his Wimbledon match against Holger Rune, where he sort of threw in an underarm serve in a very, very unfortunate part of the match and ended up losing it. It really, it was a great sort of showing, and you thought, wow, if he can hold up like this mentally and actually win a match in straight sets definitively, this could be a good year for him. He's also changed sponsors. He's now repped by Adidas, so that was fun to see. And then the other match I watched from United Cup was Katie Bolter. Katie Bolter played against Ayla Tomjanovic, who Ayla's coming back from knee injury. She played 1 match, 2 matches. No, she actually won a tournament at the end of last season. I think it was 1-2-5 or kind of a WTA challenger.
It was a pretty low stakes event.
Right, exactly. But, so she's coming back from injury, and Katie Bolter just in straight sets, very definitive win, really played phenomenal tennis. And as someone who has sort of been injury prone herself, last year made a little bit of a comeback. I think she entered the top 50 for the first time last year. It's nice to see her start her season well, and hopefully this might be a good season for her. It would also be nice if we have 2 Brits I don't think we've ever had two female Brits in playing competitively as long as I can remember anyway.
In history,
and I only say that because Emma Raducanu is coming back. In history, yes, in all of history, but not since I can remember.
So before we were born, we had in the 70s Virginia Wade and Sue Barker, who were both Grand Slam champions. But yeah, you're right. Since then, British women's tennis we've struggled to find players who will break top 50. There was a player called Joe Dury in the 80s. But then, yes, you're right. Since then, like, we've had a couple of people who flirted with the top 50, but not quite made it. But yeah, now we've got, Emma Raducanu's not there at the minute because she's not played in nearly a year.
She's not, but if you've seen those practice videos,
thereabouts.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really nice to see Katie Bolter, but also it was nice to see Ilia Tomljanovic back, which, if anyone remembers from Breakpoint fame, she's the one who beat Serena and took her out of the US Open. She kind of retired Serena, as they say. And, she had a very slow start to the match. But in the end, even though she lost, I think it was the game to take the match to 5-4. She won her service game to take it to 5-4. And I remember she went back to the bench, and the coach or the captain for the Australian team is Leighton Hewitt. And he was telling her that, that was a good game. And she was like, yeah, I wish I found that earlier before 5-4, because it's really hard to get a match back when you're down 5-4 and you already lost the first set. But it was kind of, you could see her warming up into her game, and you're sort of like, okay, this is a good start and this is a warm-up event. So it's kind of perfect for her to have this, so that going into the Australian Open, maybe she kind of gets some match play in and can have maybe a better showing at the Australian Open. But for what we've seen so far, the United Cup, it's been good. It's been good.
Yeah, it definitely has been pretty good. And it was really good last year as well. I really enjoyed watching it last year. And I think there's going to be some really fun clashes and matches this year as well. Obviously, two of my favourite players are involved, so they're always going to provide some entertainment. But yeah, I think it's got that vibe of a big event, even though it's only a couple of years old.
Yeah,
which I think it's going to make it incredibly fun to follow this season. So yeah, I would say, we've got lots of, about 18 countries involved. And actually, GB and the US are going to play each other at some point this week.
They are.
So
yes.
That's going to be,
and then Anastasia and Nick are not going to talk to each other for the whole time. And, we're just going to
I'm going to say something. I'm fully expecting the US to win that one.
We do have Fritz and Pegula, so it's gonna be tough. But then, who knows? Katie Bolter was looking good.
Katie Bolter was looking good. I still think Jessie Pegula will be the favourite when they play. Fritz Norrie could go in either direction, though.
I didn't even talk about Norrie. That was, considering how Cam Norrie ended last season, I was not expecting how he played against Alex de Minaur to happen. He beat Alex de Minaur in 3 sets.
3 sets, yeah, deciding set tiebreak.
Yeah.
By the way,
and
this is Australia, by the way. So this is GB versus Australia. The minute. So yeah, GB, Australia, and US all in one group.
Or all in one group. The draw is rigged, guys. The draw is rigged. Why would those three countries be in the same group? But yeah, so exciting things happening at United Cup. Watch it if you can. How do you watch? I think now we can start talking about how you watch all these things. United Cup is on Tennis TV.
Yes.
It's the one time you're going to get the WTA players, being shown on Tennis TV. So you can watch it on Tennis TV. You can also watch it on Tennis Channel as well.
Same in the UK. Tennis TV.
Oh, same in the UK? Nice. Two other tournaments coming, or three actually.
Several. Yeah, there's about three other tournaments. The big one has also got both the men and the women playing, which is rare for an event that size. But
This is the one, guys. This is the tournament.
Brisbane. This is Brisbane, which is a WTA 500 and an ATP 250. From looking at the fields, this seems to be where a lot of the women who are from Russia and Belarus, which were not allowed to enter teams in the United Cup for obvious reasons, are going to be doing their warm-ups, including Arina Sabalenka, Elena Rybakina, the finalists from last year. I mean, Rybakina's from Kazakhstan, but they didn't make the United Cup. I don't think they entered. Also, players like Yelena Ostapenko, Victoria Azarenka, Mira Andreeva is playing. I didn't add her into the list I originally made, but she's there. You've got Holger Rune there, and Ben Shelton is playing in Brisbane. So that's some young star factor. But
drum roll, please.
But two Grand Slam champions are making a comeback after a long time away.
Yeah.
Anastasia is very excited about one of them. Who is it? Who is it, Anastasia?
Rafael Nadal is returning to the tour.
He's back,
My
baby.
excitement, he's back. He's back. And I don't know what I'm going to do. Unfortunately for Sinner and Alcaraz, I feel like this is not going to be their year because it's going to be Nadal's year, okay? It's going to be Nadal's year, guys.
It's going to be an interesting year for Nadal and his fans like Anastasia is because it might be his last one.
Yeah. It could be his last one. I mean, there are a few players like that this year that unfortunately I'm like, oh my God, it could be their last, Andy Murray as well, who is also playing in Brisbane. So there are a few players to watch definitely that this might be it for them. They are reaching that age, but who knows? They could play till they're 40.
Nadal's pretty much said, I think, when he announced he wasn't playing the French Open last year, that when he comes to play in 2024, he's treating it like it's the last year.
Yeah, he is going to. But then he also said in an interview recently, he was like, well, who knows? I'm like, Nadal, don't do this. Don't do this, Nadal. But no, I am super excited to see him play. I'm not expecting anything at all. I just miss him on court. So, and I think that's just how I'm going to treat it. I'm not out here saying he's going to win. I'm actually not even saying he's going to win the French Open, which is his slam. But I just missed him on court last year, and it would be nice to see him playing again and just being competitive. So
here's a question.
I'm excited to, yes.
Here's a question. So this is for obviously we're here for new fans. So if you start listening to us and following tennis with us, obviously we started back in sort of September. If you joined the tour in sort of the last almost maybe not 2 years, but maybe year and a half, you probably wouldn't have had very many opportunities to see Nadal play, actually, because after the French Open after Wimbledon in 2022, he wasn't on court much and was barely winning matches, which is why I had to take some time off. What's watching Nadal play like?
I mean, and that's actually, this is why I like Carlos Alcaraz, because it was very much that I think Carlos is a little bit showman-y. So he's like a showman version of Nadal, but Nadal is one of the most intense players you could ever watch playing tennis. Like he's not smiling. He's not an Alcaraz who's like just smiling on court and running around. He's a very intense player, very sort of power forward. It's a lot of the reasons why a lot of people are surprised that he's been around for so long, because his game is so aggressive and so powerful, just the way he plays. And it's very dynamic. I don't know. You feel something when you watch, because I feel sometimes you could think tennis is just hitting a ball back and forth until someone wins the point. But with Nadal, it's always sort of, you're sitting at the edge of your seat, just in it and wondering what could possibly happen next. He's a very sort of, and it's not everyone's style. Not everyone likes an aggressive kind of player, but that's Nadal. for you. So I think he's very meticulous and a very exciting watch for sure.
And that's why I wanted to ask, because I wanted to hear from someone who loves watching him play, because
Love
this
watching
is
him.
an opportunity to go to watch him again, because he's going to be playing this year. He's not going to be playing many events, but he's definitely going to be at the slams if he
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, he probably
And
will
let's
have
face
more
it,
of a Djokovic schedule where it's
yeah,
mostly the slams and then maybe a warm-up event kind of thing.
yeah, he'll probably do a little bit more clay, like especially when Barcelona, because the main court's named after him. As an aside, yes, Nadal does make you feel things, and I'm saying this speaking as a Roger Federer fan, and watching those matches that they had over the years.
Yeah.
It's a shame we didn't start this when Roger was still playing. But anyway,
I know. But I will say, because you can find it places, if you truly are a new fan, like you started listening to us, you're new to tennis, you haven't watched it all play, go back and watch the 2008 Wimbledon final against Nadal and Federer. Documentaries have been made about it. Just watch that match and you'll see what people feel when they
be aware it
talk
is
about these
4 or
two
5 hours
players.
long. So you
Oh,
might want to break it up, or dedicate a Sunday afternoon to it, because
to it.
yeah,
And just understand that welcome to tennis. This is how long it can take sometimes.
it's one of those wonderful occasions where a long tennis match was also breathtaking, and both guys were playing so well for the entire time that it was worth
Yeah,
it, and it is worth it.
totally.
I haven't watched it in years, actually. I need to go back. I just wanted to also say for Brisbane, Naomi Osaka is coming back. Two-time US Open champion, four-time Grand Slam champion. She's back. She's had a baby. She's immediately hit the court, and she's ready to come back and show what can she give. She's been a little bit on and off for the last, again, similar amount of time for one reason or another. And I think, but she seems sort of motivated to come back, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
I'm
Another
looking,
mom coming back that we didn't talk about at the United Cup is Angie Kerber.
yes,
She's coming back to play for Germany. So that's another. So we have a few comebacks this year, actually. We have a few players to watch who are coming back. And if we base this off of a certain mom, Alina Svitolina, who came back last season, it should be exciting to see all these comebacks.
and Caroline Wozniacki in the US Open as well.
And Carolyn, yeah.
Although it was a combination of different things there. Like she became a mum, but also she was injured, so there was a bit of both going on there. So yeah, there's two other tournaments happening. They're both 250s, one ATP, one WTA. Anastasia, do you want to talk the ATP one? I'll talk the WTA one.
So weirdly, the season is mostly starting in Australia and New Zealand. But we do have a one outlier, which is the ATP 250 in Hong Kong. That is happening from the 1st to the 7th of January. There are a few names there that are like you would think, oh, everyone's going to be in Australia, but there are actually a few big names starting there. I had it up and running, but then
I've got it in front of me if you want it.
Who's playing in Hong Kong?
So the big names that I've identified as might be interesting: Andrei Rublev, top 10 player, world number 5. Karen Khachanov, US Open semi-finalist from 2022 and Australian Open semi-finalist 2023. Francis Tiafoe is there, obviously big American interest, one of my favourite players to watch. And another man making a comeback, the 2014 US Open champion Marin Cilic, who has barely played for the last year or so. So he's trying to get his end of career back on track in a similar way to Nadal and Murray.
That was the name I saw and literally I was like, didn't he retire? But then I remembered he didn't. He was just injured for so long and we just haven't seen him on tour. So that should be an interesting return as well. We also have Arthur Fils, Chris Eubanks, Lorenzo Musetti to round out the field.
Yeah. And then in the WTA, they're having a tournament in New Zealand. And I think the main headline names are basically mums and young talent. Is basically, there's no in
Who's
between,
going to
really.
win? The moms are going to win.
So the mums.
I'm calling 2024 the year of the moms, by the way. The moms are coming.
I mean, look, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. So Elina Svitolina and Caroline Wozniacki, two names we mentioned earlier when we were talking about mums in tennis, they're playing. Svitolina is the second seed. Wozniacki is returning to Australia, or sort of Australia, New Zealand area where she's had a lot of success in the past. But also we've got we've also got some important names. Amanda Anisimova, who is a very young, promising American player. Well, not that
Very
young.
surprising comeback. She's like, she's early 20s, right?
Yeah, early 20s. Yeah, I'm trying to remember how old she is. I think I remember getting her to get into the French Open semis super young, like 17. I think that was 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think she's 21, 22 now.
Yeah. Very surprising comeback for me because I thought she was done. I don't know if you follow any of it, but like I think a couple of years ago, she kind of put up a social media post where she was taking time away from tennis. It seemed to be sort of a mental break a little bit. And I just thought she was not coming back. So I was very surprised to see her in the draw for this.
A lot of people thought similar things about Osaka as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anisimova is definitely, like, it's been documented. She's had a rough few years. I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't want to do it anymore, but she seems to still want to play, want to give it a go. And she had some really good results a couple of years ago. So I'm here to see what she can do, and I'm excited about it. But of course, the big headline names are Coco Gauff is the top seed in Auckland. She's going to be drawing a lot of attention. The other name, returning from a long injury layoff after having surgery on 2 wrists and an ankle, is Emma Raducanu, who we mentioned a little bit earlier. And yeah, she's out to prove that she's not young, one and done, burned out too quickly type player.
Yeah, it's I don't know, just listening to all these names, having watched a few matches, I do have to say I was very slow to sort of pick up tennis again in the new season. But I remember turning on the TV and being like, oh, I guess the United Cup is on, so I'll watch. It's very exciting. Just the storylines, the comebacks, the moms coming back, the sort of older players who might be retiring. I think 2024 is going to be a year where there are going to be a lot of storylines. And I almost feel there's no predicting where it goes. Does Nadal retire this year, or does he keep going because he has a great season? Does Emma Raducanu put herself back in the top 50, of tennis? Naomi Osaka kind of reinvigorate her career and her love for tennis, and now even more than she ever did before. A lot of storylines, and I think it's such a perfect time to be a new tennis fan and following the sport because there's so many different types and styles of players that you can latch onto and follow them through an entire season. We haven't even talked of Qin Wen-jen. We really didn't mention too much of Arthur Fils. Like, so many things to cover. And we will be back in a couple of weeks where we're going to be previewing the Australian Open, where I feel like we definitely will go down the field and talk about all the people to be following.
Yes, and there's going to be a lot of people to be following. We may well be just shouting, like listing off a load of names at you, kind of like we have here. I mean, like, this is a crazy week in tennis. The first week back is almost as busy as a Grand Slam because everyone's playing, because they want to hit the ground running with their seasons. And it's a clean slate for everyone. That's why it's so hard to predict. And that's why the tennis this week is going to be really, really good. And I hope everyone listening can follow it. And we'll try and let you know how to follow it. Obviously, we'll probably focus on the US and the UK. But if you do want to know, maybe like, hey, can you help me research how to watch tennis in my country? I'm happy for you to message me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. We have our Grams Pass Instagram as well. Pass. We're happy to to do that. But I think
And I was going to say, no, go ahead.
I was going to say the main thing is to enjoy the tennis this week, and hopefully you'll be enjoying it with us.
Yeah. And a final note is I feel like this podcast, this style of podcast does well with participation. For the first episode of the new season, I want to encourage all our listeners, new, old, to participate more. What do you want from us this season? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to learn about? What questions do you have? What commentary do you have? So please rate and subscribe to our podcast. Leave us a note in the reviews. Send us a message on all of our social media channels, which I will post in the podcast description. We will probably have an email soon, so you can email us as well. But yeah, we would love to hear what interests you about tennis, what you want to see, what you want to learn about, because then that will help us, provide better content for you that you want to listen to. So be in touch. Don't be afraid. No question is stupid. I love that saying. But yeah, totally be in touch. Okay.
Look forward to hearing from you all.
It's been another Ground Pass podcast.
And it's been another epic. Thanks, Anastasia. Bye.
Bye.